Steve here with 6 Day Ranch. A lot of you guys reached out. We had a really good response to the mule review video that I did. If you guys haven't checked it out, go check that out. I'll try to put the link above. You asked if we had a windshield or if we were planning on putting a windshield on, and if not, why. So this video, I'm going to take you guys along for that. We purchased a Kolpin full-hinged windshield. Once we get it put on, I'll show you guys the reasons we chose to go with this one versus some other popular models and brands that are out there, including the OEM one that's provided by Kawasaki. I've never installed one of these. Hopefully it's not too painful. I'm going to take you guys along for the unboxing and the install. So I'm going to go get some tools and we'll be right back. Here's what the packaging looks like, guys. It looks like it's wrapped pretty tight. I looked it over. I didn't see any kind of damage. All the parts look like they're here. I see all the bolts, the little weather stripping, little pads so that it doesn't damage the mule, all the clamps, all that good stuff. It looks like it's all in here, so that's a good start. I'll take all this apart and we'll make sure that there's no scratches or dings on the plexiglass. All right, guys, got all the parts out. This is everything that it comes with, minus the lower half of the windshield, which I don't have room on my table. I don't want to scratch this up, so I've got it over there on the mule. So down here, you've got the instructions, and all that's needed to install this is a 4mm hex socket or hex key, shears or wire cutter, or a 10mm combo wrench. So that's it. Should be really simple install. I'm going to go get those out of the shop, and I'll be right back. Next step is to put the what they call a bulb seal. Looks like a piece of weather stripping that goes on the bottom edge of this bottom windshield, and that's what sits on top of the hood to protect it from rattling, and it protects your paint from scratches and stuff like that. Already ran into one issue. It's not real hard to get on. It only fits on one direction, but they give you plenty. If you stretch this bad boy out, you can see that you've got plenty off of both sides. You want to start so that you have excess on the side that you start with, because this little contour here is actually going to cause it to pull away from the end a little bit. So if you start it right on the edge like I just did, by the time you get down here and get it tight, it's actually going to pull away from the edge a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of excess on the outside, and we'll come back and we'll trim it later. One thing to note is the edge of these things is actually lined with a piece of metal. It's pretty tough. So when I cut this, you can actually see metal right here. So a simple pair of scissors is not going to work. I got a pair of shears that's a little bit tougher. I use these. In the worst case scenario, I would have just used some wire cutters, but I just wanted to point that out, that you're going to dull some scissors if you try to cut that. I just went inside and found a PDF version of the install instructions. Kolpin, if you're watching, these directions are terrible. The quality is just not there for a product like this. Of this kind of quality, guys, we would expect some nice color or at least some more detail on a black and white copy. So guys, if you're listening, please give people better instructions than this. Fortunately, I was able to find a PDF online that was more clear, and you could see the detail. So I can view that here on my phone. I'm going to post a link for you guys down below so that you won't have to go back and forth like I did. So the first step is to install the lower mount on the inside of this lower windshield piece. So note the orientation here. This little lip right here is a lip that goes on the inside of the mule. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn this over, because this is, if you're facing the mule, if you're inside the mule facing out, this is the direction you want it to face. So we're going to pop this over here, and these pieces are going to go on the inside, one here and one on the opposing side, facing the opposing direction. So what that's going to take is this little guy right here. It's an M6 by 18mm screw with a lock washer, and these little they call them little shoulder washers. It's a little indented piece of plastic to protect the outside of the plexiglass. So that's going to go underneath, and I just wanted to show you guys the orientation. So I'm going to flip it back around to get to the screws a little bit better, but this is what it would look like from the inside. Once we put that on, we're going to flip it back over and continue to build from this direction. Next step is to put this slider mount into this little mount here on the bottom of the windshield, and that's actually what's going to attach. So you're just going to use another one of those M6 screws. Guys, I got my man Devin out here helping. He's finished with school, at least for now. So the next step is to put your hinges on. So what I did was I brought the top windshield piece in. Notice that we're facing the inside of the windshield, so the front is facing down. These little arms are going to be facing towards you. The top part of the windshield has this little like a visor piece up top that pivots in, so that's going to be angled towards you, not towards the other direction. So you're going to slide these hinges in from underneath, and there is another type of shoulder washer. This is a flat one. Earlier we had the ones that were rounded on top. These are flat, and the lock nuts that come with this thing. So that's what you're going to do to put these on. So we've already got the first one on. We're going to go put the other two on. Next thing we're going to do is install the clamps on the windshield. You're going to want to make sure that the Kolpin logo is facing outward when you do these installs. You're going to use the number 6 screw with a lock washer and a curved shoulder washer as well on that. It's going to have to come from the underneath based on the orientation that we've got now. I may have to flip it over. If I do, I'll show you guys that. One quick thing to note on these clamps: when you put them on, make sure that they're hand tight. Everything can be cinched and tightened down once it gets on the mule, but it's going to make it a whole lot easier if it's got that looseness to it when you go to put it on the roll cage. So quick tip. Next step, you're going to use these little hand bolts here along with another clamp, and you're going to attach it to this arm right here. And in this case, you're using the same clamp. It's the exact same clamp, but you want the holes to line up through this on the outside. So if you're looking at it here like I am, you want the Kolpin logo to face you, and you're also going to use the top hole. So you're going to pop it right through here. I'm going to go ahead and fold this down like that. So I'm going to get it tight, but I'm not going to get it real tight so that it'll open like that. I'm going to do the same on the other side. So next step, we're going to go ahead and put this foam seal piece along the top edge of the windshield right here. All right, guys, so got my man Devin helping me over here. We've got the windshield sitting on the hood right now. This does take 2 people. I imagine you could do it with 1 person with some clamps and a little bit of ingenuity, but I don't want to break this thing. So I got Devin helping out. What we're going to do is we're going to slide the top in first, because if you'll notice, there's a lip on the particular roof that we have here, so you wouldn't be able to just slap it on there straight. So we're going to have to slide it in and up to get on the roof. So we're going to see what that looks like. Is your clamp open?
So far down. It's about to be.
Okay, so I need to get mine in.
Clamps are closed.
Okay, so let's see what this looks like. Slide it up. You might have to reach. You see this this where the foam is, buddy? That should be touching the top. Yeah. And we're gonna start from the top down. So my man Devin's supporting it on that side. I'm gonna put this side in place, and I'm going to go ahead and tighten this clamp around the pole, and then I'm going to go over to the other side and tighten that one first. And then we can tweak it a little bit and figure out where these bottom clamps need to be exactly and tighten those as well. Here's a little close-up of the clamp and the way that it goes on. One thing I didn't mention is there are these little rubber inserts that go along the inside of the clamps, depending on the size of the roll cage on your particular model, because this thing fits a few different models. You may need a spacer. It's also going to protect this from scratching and keep this from sliding back and forth. So what you got to do is slide this behind the clamp like so. And just line it up with the edge as best you can. See, in my case here, I've got it lined up. And when I close this, that's going to go all the way around. I guess I could move it just a little bit. There we go. Get it down just a little bit, just for aesthetics purposes. Forgot my screw. All right, so those longer M6 screws are the ones that you want to attach this with. All of these clamps attach generally the same way, with one screw holding it together, holding it tight on the roll cage. Hey guys, got my beautiful wife to help me finish up the Kolpin windshield install on this mule. We went around, cinched down all the clamps nice and tight, adjusted them, tweaked them. We went ahead and tightened the rest, all of the bolts that we purposefully left loose earlier to help with the fit. And I want to show you guys this bottom feature here. This is one of the reasons we went with this windshield over some of the other ones. Pretty much all of them have this fold up bottom, which is a necessity on these models, because to get to this access compartment you got to fold that up. We'll show you that in a minute. But this one has a neat little feature. It has a ventilation feature. It's got little arms that we installed, one of the first steps. These arms, if you loosen up, there's little hand bolts in here. If you loosen those up, there's two notches where you just slide it forward and pull it up, and you can retighten it. And you see there's about 2 inches of airspace down there, so when you're driving you'll actually get a little bit of airflow on a hot day like today, for instance. And the next one is here, so even more airflow. And if you take it off all the way, and fold it all the way up, you'll see you got the that seal that helps protect the top windshield from any kind of scratches. If you look at the clearance, when I come to open this hood, it's about, not a lot, it's really tight, but there's about a 1/2 inch clearance, so there's plenty of clearance on this windshield to get the hood open and close. So I'm happy about that. And to put this back in place, all we do is put these hand bolts right back in place. Just kind of let it rest on the hood and tighten it down. That's it. And I don't think it's going to go anywhere. So far we're pretty happy with it. We're going to show you guys what it looks like on the road here in a little bit. We're going to take it for a trip. I'm interested to see how much rattle there is, if any. Hopefully there's none. And we just want to see how it holds up in general, as far as going to a little bit higher speed, as well as going over some terrain that's a little bit rougher. So we'll show you guys that. So I just wanted to show you the inside of what these adjustable arms look like. My beautiful wife right over there is on the other side. She's going to adjust the other side for me. So you could do this one person, but it's a lot easier with two. So all you gotta do is loosen up this hand bolt right here, just enough to where this wiggles, and then push out on the windshield. And there's little notches. You can see one here and there's one there for 2 different types of ventilation, or 2 different settings, I guess you could say. So that's a smaller one. And if you push it out more, that's the bigger one. You can kind of see from inside the cab. This is about eye level here where you'd be sitting. So you've got plenty of protection, but you should have a nice little ventilation flow through the front. I want to show you something that caused me a little bit of trouble at the end, or not trouble, but it was definitely confusing. I don't know if your set is going to come with this, but if you'll look at this piece here, and there's also some spacers here. These guys are mentioned nowhere in the directions. I went over those things about 3 times. My beautiful wife here went over them several times as well, and these are not mentioned anywhere. Only assumption we have is that these are for a different machine, and not this particular model mule, maybe even something that's not a Kawasaki. But these do not go on this windshield. If you get these, don't worry about them. Toss them, save them for a spare, whatever, but these do not go with this windshield. If I would have read the directions correctly the first time, it said to leave the protective film on here. and just kind of peel it back a couple of inches so that you can get to this. And then when you're done, you would take that off, and that's going to protect the plexiglass, because plexiglass isn't very strong. So you won't be able to see that in this camera, but there are a few small scratches that I put on this plexiglass just simply from sitting on that plastic table. There's a couple of kind of jagged edges that aren't very jagged, but it was enough to put a few small scratches in this thing. So in hindsight, two things I would have done: I would have put a blanket on, or at least a sheet on top of this here on this table, and I would have left the protective film on at least one of the sides, maybe the side that was facing down, just to protect it just a little bit more. That being said, there's small scratches. Once we get this thing wiped down, because there's fingerprints and smudges all over it from the install, I don't think we'll be able to notice them. I don't think they're going to be a problem. All right, guys, so from that last video, you could see we took it down the road for just a little bit, and I wanted to test out this vent, and it looks like when it's up and you're going over, say, 5 miles an hour, there's no support right here, so it flaps pretty good. So I would not use this vent unless you were either stationary or putting around the property going, say, 5 miles an hour or less. I don't know if it's rated. I didn't read that in the instructions or not, but you definitely can't go with this thing up down the road. Other than that, everything stayed where it was supposed to be. No excessive bowing or wobbling. It didn't rattle, which I'm pretty happy about. And more importantly, we didn't eat any bugs when we went down the road and came back. So that's a win all the way around, guys. So I hope y'all liked the video.
And if y'all did, make sure y'all hit that like and subscribe button down below. And we're also going to have this specific make and model of windshield in the description as well.
Thanks, guys.